in the Sechet Sanhedrin is Pei Beit, 82. And we are up to the last line on 81b, where we said in our Mishnah that there are certain things that are sort of extrajudicial punishments, and that is what we call Kanaim Pogimbo, which we're going to discuss in the ramifications of that. But almost by definition, there aren't a lot of rules for that, right? That means it's a spontaneous thing. It's people who feel motivated, whatever that means, Kanaim, and they have to do it when the person is in the middle of the act. It's not like after the act you come and say, "Oh, I saw this guy doing something wrong. I want to punish him." That's too late, right? It's if you see them doing it, you can act against them. So the last case we had yesterday, or the case we're up to, is Haboel Aramit, someone who sleeps with an Aramit, which we take to mean anyone who's not Jewish. Now, there's debate about exactly the parameters of what's an Aramit, but that's what we understand it. Now, Boimine Rav Kana Rav. Kana asked Rav on the top of Daf Pei Bet Amud Aleph now, what was unfortunately a pretty, it happens, which is someone sleeps with someone who's not Jewish, a man sleeps with a woman who's not Jewish, and nobody stops him, and everybody knows about it. So he asked Rav, Lo Pagubo Kanaim Ma'u, right? If people don't attack him, what do we do, right? What is our responsibility, if anything, so to speak, to a person who's sleeping with a non-Jewish woman inappropriately? So, is there an action that we can take after the fact? So says the Gemara, Rav forgot. Inashe Rav the Gemara. Rav forgot what he had learned about it. Rav said, I remember learning about this. I remember covering this in, elementary school, and I forgot, which happens to all of us. Doesn't happen to Rav as often as us, but, that's what happened. So anyways, he was very sad. He said, I'll look into it. That night, Rav Kahana had a dream. And in his dream, he saw this pasuk in Malachi, his pasuk at the end of Malachi. It says, Bagda Yehuda, the Jewish people, Yehuda rebelled. The To'eva Nasta Yisrael, and they did a To'eva, will be Yerushalayim and in Jerusalem, Ki Chilel Yehuda Kodesh Hashem, Asher Ahev. They were Mechalel. They desecrated the Kedusha of Hashem, which they loved. Baal Bat El Nechar, and they slept with the daughter of a foreign god. So this was weird for Rav Kahana. He didn't usually have dreams like this. So Ata Amarle came the next morning to Rabbi. He said, it was crazy. I had this crazy dream. And he said, Hachi Akaryan, this is what I read or read and, was reminded of in my dream. And Rav said, oh, that's right. You were sending a message to me. That's exactly what I remembered. It's Karei Rav the Gemara. Rav remembered what he had learned, which is this pasuk. The way we dash in the pasuk is, Bagda Yehuda, Yehuda rebelled. That means Zu Avodah Zarah. That means they worshipped idols. It says in Yirmiyahu, Kin bagadatem bi Beit Yisrael Hashem. Beit Yisrael has rebelled against me, says God, referring to worshiping Avodah Zarah. So that is what the pasuk is referring to there. But then when it continues and says, To'eva nasta Yisrael Yerushalayim, they did a To'eva. So To'eva, of course, is the language of Mishkav Zachar. It's always referred to homosexual relations. Or not always, but that's one way we refer to To'eva. So V'cheinu Omer, Zachar lo tishkav Mishkavei Isha To'eva hi. So then the pasuk concludes in Malachi and says, Ki chilel Yehudat Kodesh Hashem zezona. That is, chilel, meaning they were mechalel, they desecrated. That's referring to sleeping with a zona, with a prostitute. V'cheinu omer lo tiyeh kiddesha. Yisrael, we use the word kiddesha from the word, which obviously a very similar play to the word kodesh, right? But you learn that kiddesha is the kedusha. And the final description in the pasuk was Baal Bat El Nechar, you slept with a Bat El Nechar, that's referring to Zab Baal Ha Goya, right? That's someone who sleeps with, obviously whenever we have the word Goya, we have different Girsot in the Gemara. But my Gemara, I have two Gemaras in front of me. One says Kutit, and one says Goya, right? And so again, this is always subject to censor.
Hanochrit.
And you have Nochrit. Okay, so you see that these are clearly, censored and changed and modified. But referring to someone who sleeps with a non-Jew, right? And then the pasuk continues, Malachi, and says, what happens to someone who does all this, right? That, which was the question he asked Rav, right? A kanai can kill a person if they catch them in the act, as we're about to see with Pinchas. But let's say you don't catch them in the act, you don't act on it, or you're not a kanai. What happens to such a person? Div batre, it says right after this pasuk, in Malachi, yikaret Hashem leish asher yasena. God will cut off that person who does this, er va'ona me'alei Yaakov. They will be cut off, and er, we're going to dash in these words. Er literally means awake, right? And onem means someone who answers. From the tents of Yaakov, umagish mincha l'Hashem tzvaot, and one who would bring a offering, a mincha to Hashem. So what does that mean? In Talmid Chacham hu, if he's a righteous person, if he's a scholar, then he will not. Lo yiyelo er b'chachamim v'oneh b'talmidim. He won't be alert to discuss the topics with the Chachamim or to answer to his students. And in Kohenhu, then of course his punishment will be lo yelo pain. He will not have a child magish mincha Hashem tzvaot to bring a karbanot, meaning that there's a curse on this person, basically that they will be some form of karet, not regular karet, but this kind of form of karet. So, meaning his answer was, we don't punish the person, but God will have a punishment for that person. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Avuya, and said Rabbi Chia bar Avuya, kol ha'ba'al goya, or again, nachrit, whatever language you have, anyone who sleeps with a non-Jewish woman, there's not a Torah prohibition on that, but we act against it. As we said, the Kanaim can kill him. Hashem punishes the person, and they treated it, the Beit Din made it, ki'ilu mitchatein b'avodah zarah. It's as if they slept or married in avodah zarah. Dichtiv, as we just read in the pasuk, Baal bat el nechar. You slept with the daughter of a foreign god. What do you mean? The gods don't have daughters. Chibat yesh lo le'el nechar. Elzeh ba'al gaya means you slept with someone who's not Jewish. It's as if you worship that god. So it's worse than just, again, as if sleeping with the person, it's like actually worshiping their god. And of course, that all goes into the story, which we're dancing around, I'm about to get to, of Cosby and Zimri when they were worshiping Baal Peor, and they were also sleeping with the women.
So this would seem to apply to sleeping with people who are idol worshippers, specifically, where there are non-Jews who aren't idol worshippers.
So 100%, your point is correct. Like I said before, what the parameters, we use the word aramit, right?
Right.
So aramit is Rashi translates it in the Mishnah, or explains it, as bat oved kochavim. So 100%, whether this would apply or what it would mean if a woman you slept with was not an idol worshiper, was not Jewish, is really not clear. And why we use aramit and the parameters, right? Again, it's a little tricky because really in halacha we don't do anything, right? I mean, a kanai can be pogea, but nobody else, the court won't punish a person.
Right.
So we could talk about these punishments, but of course only God knows, what punishments and who someone is and how to view that. But that,
as you mentioned earlier, in the other direction, toiba is used for a lot of things.
Right, it's true.
Yeah.
But that is correct. But again, this is, and this Gemara does, we do equate very much, sleeping with them with worshiping their gods, which of course is a problem if they're idol worshippers. But that is from the story that we have in the pasuk, which we'll get to in a minute, right? But before we get there, said Rabbi Chia, and I did that. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Avuya. The next thing Rabbi Chia bar Avuya said is interesting, maybe not so relevant. We'll see why, but this, of course, is the same person, Rabbi Chia bar Avuya, speaking. That interestingly, Ketuva Gugal Toshel Yehoyakim. Yehoyakim was one of the kings who was a really bad king, right, and got all kinds of bad things said about him from the Nevi'im. We'll see Yirmiyahu in a minute. But it on his skull, it was written, I guess, by God or by divine providence, Zot v'odacheret. This is going to happen to him, and more is coming. Okay, that's what it said. Now, what's the story behind this? So said Rabbi Chia bar Avuya, interesting story, that Zikeno, Rabbi Preda, the grandfather of Rabbi Preda, right, who was Rabbi Chia bar Avuya. He was the Zikeno of Rabbi Preda. Ashkechahu Gugalta. He once was walking through Jerusalem, and as many of us know, if you go through Jerusalem and you start digging, you start finding bones, right? It's led to a lot of problems in the state of Israel, right? But he found a skull. The Habishadya B'Shari Yerushalayim was laying on the gates, outside the gates of Jerusalem. So outside the gates, in the fields, he picked up a skull and he thought, let me take this to bury it and treat it with the right respect. But he saw that it's written on the skull, Zot v'odacheret. This and another thing. We'll see. He didn't know yet what it was. But it said that, which is really weird. Either way, Kavre, he buried it because he thought, that's the right thing to do. It's respect for a dead person. But unfortunately, then he looked 5 minutes later or the next day, Hadar Nivug, it was exposed again. Clearly it wasn't, it had edged out of the ground. So Kavre buried it again, Hadar Nivug, and again, he found later that it had come out of the ground. So Amar, he said to himself, oh, it must be Hai Gogota de Yehoyakim. He realized this is the skull of Yehoyakim, the king. Dichtiv Bey, because it says Yirmiyahu curses him and says, Kfurat chamar yikaver, you're going to have the burial of a donkey. Sechov v'hashlech mehala l'shar Yerushalayim. You'll be buried and pulled out. Hashlech means you'll dragged out from here to the gates of Jerusalem. Meaning you're not going to be buried like the dogs of, you see the bones of a donkey are exposed. No one buries a donkey, right? They lay on the surface of the desert. So your bones too are going to be exposed, and you're going to be, even though they'll try to bury them, it'll just not work. And that's clearly what's going on here. But he said to himself, Amar, even though I clearly can't bury him because it just has magically comes up, Malkahu, he was a king. And, we should have some respect in some way of treating a king. It's not appropriate to embarrass, the king, to treat it with bizayon. So he took the skull home. So Shakli took it. Karchel Bisharai wrapped it in some very nice silk, really nice a cloth thing for skull wrapping. V'otzvei besifta, and he put it in a box in his house, and a chest. So this was in his pirate chest. He had the skull of Yehoiakim. So of course he didn't tell anyone in his family about this. One day his wife was cleaning for Pesach, right? Ata debitu, his wife finds it, chazite, and she sees. Can imagine opening the closet, and on the top shelf, she finds a skull in a beautiful bag. So Nifakat, it came out basically, right? So she went out and Amrle Shivavite, and she said to her neighbor, she said, "What do I do? I found this in my house. I don't know what's going on, and my husband, killing people." So Amrila, so the neighbor said to her, clearly this is a young love that he had, right? Hi de itita kamaitahi. This was from his first wife. She must have died young or whatever, and he can't separate from her, and he's got hidden in the back of his closet her skull. He doesn't forget her. So of course the wife got incensed, and she said, "Shagarta the tanura v'kalta." She took the skull, she threw it into the oven, and roasted it up till it dissolved. So Rabbi Chia comes home. Kiata Amar, he said, "Oh, now I understand the nevuah. This is going to happen. This, not being able to be buried, and another thing, which is that not only was that the bizayon, but it's going to end up being burned alive, basically. So this was the nevuah of the curse of Yehoiakim. But back to our topic, Yatra Avdimi.
Just a question before you go.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at Malachim Bet, and Rashi says that Jehoiakim was actually taken by Nebuchadnezzar to Babylon, and that's explicit in Divrei Hayamim. And Rashi says that he died there.
Correct.
So he must have been.
How did his skull get back? Yeah, I don't know the answer.
Yeah, because Nebuchadnezzar was not exactly friendly to Jewish religious traditions.
Right. No, 100%. I think I don't know the answer, to be honest with you. But I think it does say, right. It's interesting. It does say that he carried him back in chains. It does say it in Divrei Yam
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I think Yirmiyahu may say something about that. Worthy of some more research.
But actually, no, one second. But again, we should pull it up. But I thought he died during the siege. It says that his body was brought back.
It doesn't say he says that let's see. But this is Divrei Hayamim Bet.
Yeah, Divrei Yamim, it says he brought him back in chains.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. There are other sources. It's interesting. I'm looking at this now too, that say he actually died in Jerusalem. But either way, Yirmiyahu does say this, that his body will be dragged out there beyond the gates of Jerusalem. So either if that's true, it came back. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
He was, king at the end. Anyways, Kiyata Rav Dimi, back to our Gemara now. Rav Dimi said, Beit Dino shel Chashmonai, the Beit Din of the Chashmonaim, which was a very early court in the rabbinic tradition, very early, right? Pre really much of the authoring of the Gemara or any of the Gemara, but even the Mishnah, they were gazru haba'al ha-kutit or haba'al goya, someone who sleeps with a non-Jew or a idol worshiper, chayav aleh, even though again, though the Torah doesn't really say you can't do it, we say a kanai can kill you and that Hashem will punish you, but they added levels of prohibition. They were said you're also chayav mishum nida, And again, really, nida doesn't apply to a non-Jew, but they made it as if nida, shivcha, as if you're sleeping with a servant, which you're not allowed to, a goya or a kutit, and eshetish. Again, generally, we don't treat it like an eshetish because we don't consider their marriage to be a marriage, but they added these kind of midrabanan levels of isur. Kiata Ravin, when Ravin came, he said, no, he changed one of the letters. Did I read the acronym? I didn't. It was Nashga. But this is Mishum Nashgaz, the Nida, Shifcha, Goya, and Zona. That he called it a zona as if he slept with a woman who was, a prostitute. Avo Mishum Eshetish Letlahu. He didn't call it Eshetish because you wouldn't consider it to be Eshetish because we don't recognize their marriage. The Idach and the Tanakh, the first opinion was that no, it's not true. That even though we don't necessarily think of it as a marriage and Eshetish in the Torah, they want to be attached to their wives. There is marriage, and therefore sleeping with a woman who is married is as if sleeping with an Eshetish. Okay, so that is the Beit Din Chashmonai. Says the Gemara, interestingly, what happens, right? So where are we? Third to last narrow line. Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chan, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Said Rabba Bar Bar Chan, did I skip a little bit? I did skip a little bit. Hold on.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Thank you. Itmer Nami. No, where am I? Amar Rav Chisda. I skipped one line. Yeah, fourth to last narrow line. Said Rav Chisda, Habal Limloch. Right, let's say a person comes to the court and says, "What should I do? I see my neighbor. He's sleeping with the daughter of a avodah zarah. He's sleeping with a non-Jewish woman. How do I deal with it?" Says Rav Chisda, "Ein morin lo." We do not judge for him that he's allowed to kill them. This is not something that the court can tell you to do. If you are inspired and you're active and you feel like you have to do it, that's a kanai. We don't tell you to do kanaut. It doesn't work that way. Itmarnami. In fact, there's another statement. Rabbi Barchan, Rabbi Yochanan, Habalim lech. If they come to ask, how do I judge? Ein morim lo. We don't judge for them that he goes and kills the person. Below Od, and furthermore, getting now to our, of course, primal story in the Torah of Pinchas and Zimri, if, says the Gemara, im Piresh Zimri b'hargol Pinchas, if Zimri, who was engaged in active intercourse with Cosby, had stopped when Pinchas came in to attack him, and Pinchas still killed him, Neragalav, we would have killed Pinchas for murder, because the only time you can kill the person is while they're in the middle of the act. And furthermore, even if he had continued the act, but Nepach Zimri b'hargol Pinchas, if Zimri had killed Pinchas in self-defense, a Neragalav, we would not have killed Zimri, Sharei Rodefu. You still, if the person killing you is doing it on their own volition. They're basically a rodef. They're a sort of a sanctioned rodef, but you can kill them. Now, let's get to this whole story of Pinchas and Zimri. The Moshe Shoftei Yisrael, right, the story starts by Moshe talking to Shoftei Yisrael, and he's saying, everyone, this was right, they were worshiping Baal Pa'ar, and Moshe says, go and let's make courts and punish the people who worship Baal Pa'ar. Says the Gemara, Halach Shifto Shel Shimon Etel Zimri ben Salu. The Shevet of Shimon went to Zimri, who was their Nasi. Amrullah, they said to him, look, what's going on here? Moshe's killing everybody. Moshe's sending people out to be judged to kill people for Baal Pa'ar. You're not standing up to Moshe. And of course, the people of Shimon had been worshiping the idol. What Ma'asa? So what did Zimri do? He got 24,000 people on his side, which was a big population, right? They had 600,000. That's a sizable group to gather together around him to make trouble. He went to Cosby, who was the daughter of the Midianite king, basically, right? The prince, Cosby Batsur. Amarla, he said to her, Hishmieli, sleep with me. Come, listen to me, which means it's a euphemism for sex. Sleep with me. I want to show Moshe what we're doing here. Amrullah, so she said to him, 1 second, Pat Melechani, I'm the daughter of the Nasi, of the king. And my father gave me strict instructions. You can go and seduce the Jewish people, but your target is one man. Lo tishmei el legadol shebehem. You can only sleep with the greatest, with Moshe. So I can't. Sorry, Zimri, you're not you're not my level. Maybe I have a friend here. Amarla, so he said to her, 1 second, and this, of course, the Gemara is going through the psychology of the desert, which remember we've had many times, because he said to her, 1 second. Afu nasi shevetu. He too, and he's referring to himself in third person. Me too. I'm a nasi. I'm also a prince. The lo od elashu gadomi menu. I am greater than Moshe. Sheni the Betin. Who Sheni the Betin? He comes from I come from the second son, which is Shimon. Who Shlishi the Betin? Moshe comes from Levi, right? Which is the third. And remember, there was always that tension with Korach and with him about exactly, who is really greater. Either way, she agreed to him. So Tafsabib,
And Moshe was also third born.
it's true, but I don't think we
Two
know.
older siblings.
I don't know if Cosby was for third born. That's either way, Zimri, sorry, Zimri. So Zimri tafsa blorita. He grabbed her by her hair, meaning to show his understanding is he was showing basically something very vulgar that he's, taking her. Moshe, he dragged her and he came in front of Moshe and he said, "Look who I'm going to sleep with." Amr lo, he said to him, Ben Amram, which of course is the insulting name, for Moshe. Zu asura muteret. Let me tell you, can I sleep with this woman, this daughter, this princess of Midian, or not? In tomorrow's Surah, you're going to tell me, of course I can't. But what about you? Bat Yitro, mihitirlach. You also married a princess of Midian, right? Yitro is also a Kohen Midian. Really a problem. Now, of course, the difference, as Rashi reminds us, is that Moshe did that before Har Sinai, before Matan Torah. It was a different time. But you could see why this seems like a problem for Moshe to answer. So Nit'alma menu halacha. Moshe forgot the halacha. Moshe basically was flabbergasted. He didn't say anything. And all of a sudden, this challenge to Moshe and this, authority and ga'u kulam bebechi, everyone started crying because Moshe basically seemed to have lost his authority. And that's why the pasuk says, "Hema bochim petach olamoi." They were crying. Then it says, "Vayar Pinchas ben Elazar." Right? Pinchas saw. What do you mean he saw? Mara'ah. Rav says, well, he saw. Sometimes you don't remember something until you see it in action. Ra'ah Maseh. He saw Zimri trying, bringing this woman to sleep with her, and he said, Niskar halacha. He remembered the halacha. Marlo. He said to Moshe, Achi avi abba, my grandfather's brother, which was Moshe, my great uncle. Lo kachni maritani b'ritcha Har Sinai. Didn't you teach us? When you came down from Har Sinai, that if someone sleeps with a bat vodah zarah, there's no Torah, there's no Beit Din punishment, but Kanaim can punish them. Amarlo, so Moshe said to him, well, the one who remembers is the one who fulfills it. Karyana digarta, the one who reads the letter, they should be the one to fill it out. So you are the one who should fulfill this. Shmuel says that's not what it means. It's not that he saw the halacha. What he did was he didn't even ask Moshe if it was okay. Ra'ah, he remembered or he saw, there's no, standing on ceremony in front of God. In front of Hashem, meaning wherever it's leading to desecration of Hashem, like in this case where they were, leading to questioning the whole authority of Moshe. Ein cholkim kavod the Rav. You don't have to ask the Rav. You don't have to clarify. You just act. Rabbi Yitzchak Rabbi Lazar said that's not what happened. What Pinchas saw is that there was a malach coming and starting slaughtering the people, right? And obviously he knew which would happen. The Mageifa happened. Tens of thousands of people died. So basically he saw that this was going to be big trouble. He had to act quickly or Klal Yisrael was going to be wiped out. So he got up and now we are on the last line of, exactly the last line of Daf Pei Bet Amud Aleph. Vayakam mitoch eidah, he got up out of the crowd. Vayikach romach biyado, he took a spear in his hand. Now, says the Gemara, what does that mean? Why do you have to take a spear? It must be that he was sitting there and he didn't have his weapon with him. Why didn't he have his gun at his side? You can't the Beit Midrash. You can't go with weapons into a Beit Midrash, right? It's like a hospital. So, anyways, he had to go outside and get his weapon. So shalaf shinina. Now, of course, if he walked in with a weapon, they would have looked at him very suspiciously. So he took off the shinina, which is like the blade, the piercing part at the top of the spear. And he put it, in his pocket, he hid it under his shirt. He did the old James Bond trick. He was walking with his piece of wood that was his spear, but he made it into a cane, basically, right? A walking stick. Turn the page to Pei Bet Amud Bet. So he was walking with this thing, and he came in. Now, of course, again, there was clearly going to be a lot of suspicion about what was going on. This was a time of tremendous turmoil and rebellion, right? And he came from the wrong Shevet. He came from Levi. So he was probably on Moshe's side. But when he got to the Shevet of Shimon, to wherever they were gathering, he said to them, why can't you let me in? Who says, meaning he basically, I agree with you. Why is Levi so much greater than Shimon? Who says that? I accept your authority. Amrusha, they said Hanicholo. Okay, let him come in. Afu lasot tzrachav nichnas. Maybe he's coming to do his business, meaning to also sleep with these women. Hetiru prushim et davar, right? And they were happy because they said, look, the prushim, which is the literally means, we use prushim obviously very differently in our context, but it means the same thing almost. The ones who are close to Moshe, who are fighting against the Egel, all these kind of things. Now they're joining up into our orgy. So they were very happy to welcome Pinchas in. Of course, that was a mistake, but that's what they did. Pinchas came in and he killed them, Cosby and Zimri, and he came out. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the Shishani Sim Nasalo Pinchas, he had 6 miracles happen to him at that time. Echad Shayil Zimri Lefrosh Leperush. Peresh, right? When he walked into the tent, Zimri could have stopped having sex with the woman. And then remember, Pinchas couldn't kill him because you can only kill a person who sleeps with an Aramit if you kill them while they're doing it. So it's a little bit illogical that Zimri did not stop, but he didn't. And that's why Pinchas could kill him. So that's one. Zimri should have screamed out, this guy's coming to kill me. And the whole cavalry would have run in and he didn't say anything. So he killed him. Echad. Now, one is that he speared them right through their genitals. So he got both of them, basically, as we're going to see in a second, that he killed them by spearing them through the man's zachuto, his penis, and her nikfuto. So that was a miracle. It's a very hard shot. Now, then he took them on the spear and he lifted them up in that act, showing what everyone had done, the violation, basically. They didn't fall off the spear, which is a pretty big miracle, given the weight and the position. Echad, and then a 5th miracle, Sheba Malach Vigbiat Mashkof. Right? It's hard to get them out of the tent. There's a very small opening. He's got 2 people on the spear. The Malach came and opened up the opening of the tent so he can walk out with them and show everyone what he did and justify why he did it. He didn't just kill a Nasi. He did it while he was in the act of this inappropriate act. And the final one is that the angel came and he destroyed the people, which was a terrible thing, but it distracted anyone from killing Pinchas, right? So Pinchas came out with this spear and these people, and he basically threw them down in front of the ground, and he said to Hashem, Amar lefanav, to God, Ribono shel olam, al elo yiplu esrim v'arba elef Yisrael. On this, because these people who did something inappropriate, you're going to punish so many other people. There were 24,000 people who died. And that's what we mean when we say, right? We, of course, read Vayipalel often, as Yipalel means he made judgment, meaning he accused God almost, or was challenging to Hashem. Why are you killing so many people for the sin of this person? But of course, Yipalel also means Yitzpalel. He essentially prayed in front of God to stop it, to say, these were the people who did it. I killed them. Let's stop the death among the Bnei Yisrael. Amar Rabbi Elazar, v'yitzpalel lo nemar. Now, although we say it means that he prayed, it doesn't say v'yitzpalel. Ela v'yipalel melamed, as I said, as if he made kaviyachol. We don't like to say this directly. Sha'asa pililot in kono. He was making a judgment. He was arguing against God, saying, God, what you did was inappropriate because you killed so many people for someone else's sin. So it says in the Gemara, Bikshu Malachei Hasharet l'dachvo. The Malachei Hasharet wanted to kill him, to push him away, because he is starting up with God. Amar lahan, and God said to Malachei Hasharet, Tenicholo, leave him, Kanai ben Kanaihu. He comes from a family, and Rashi is from Levi, right? Who was, of course, a Kanai when Dinah was raped, and so he comes to it rightfully. Meshiv chema be meshiv chema. He comes from the family also of Aaron, right, which is also Levi, his grandfather, who brings meshiv chema. He takes away my anger by doing, by the plague of with the Ketoret, right? He's meshiv chema ben meshiv chemahu. So that's his nature. He's acting the way he's supposed to act. Leave him be. Anyways, Bnei Yisrael did not take it so lightly. When the Shvatim saw what Pinchas had done, he killed Zimri and Cosby together. They started making fun of him. What are you doing? Ritem ben Puti zeh. Look at this child of a Puti, right? What does that mean, Puti? Shepitem avi imo agalim avodah zarah. His grandfather, his mother's father, not from his father, right? His mother's father was from Yitro also. And he was fattening up idols for Avodah Zarah. Yitro was also an Oved Avodah Zarah. And all of a sudden, this guy is super righteous. Harag Nasi Shevet Yisrael. He's coming to kill a Nasi Shevet. So Ba Katuv Yichaso. That's why the pasuk continues and says, remember in the beginning of Pinchas, that he is Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. That he comes to it rightfully. He's not a ben Puti. He's the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron. He's a righteous person, and he acted out of righteousness, and therefore I don't stop accusing him. Amar lo Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, and Hashem said to Moshe, "Hakdim lo shalom." Right? He basically you should be the one, Moshe, be makdim. You should go to him with the greeting of shalom. Shenemar l'chein elmor. You should say hineni noten lo et briti shalom. You should tell everybody that I'm giving Pinchas the brit of shalom. V'ru'uya kapara zu shtei mechaberet v'olechet lo'olam. That it's a briti shalom forever. That this kapara that he did, meaning that he avenged my honor, says God, by killing these people and stopping the Magefa, will go on forever. Now, Amar of Nachman Amar Rav. This is really, it's not so clear what does that to do with. So also of Nachman Amar Rav, but there's a very weird pasuk. We are now 8 or so, maybe 9 of the wide lines down. It says Rav Nachman Amar Rav, my dichtiv, there's a very strange pasuk in Mishlei that says the following. It says, Zarzir matnayim otayash. Right? There is a Zarzir matnayim, which they translate as like a goat, like a I don't know. There's different. My English has greyhound. I've seen other translations that it's like a billy goat, but basically some kind of wild, let's say, or aggressive male animal, od tayash, or a male goat. That's a he goat, right? Umelech alkum imo, and the king of the alkum, right? Alkum we translate as alkum. Nobody can fight him. So the invincible king is with him. What is that referring to? What's this pasuk talking about? So in fact, the word zarzir, the word zarzir is a gematria. If you add it up, 200, 224 altogether, right? This is referring to Cosby and Zimri. He slept with her, he ejaculated and slept with her 424 times. Pinchas waited for him to do all that until he got weaker so he could kill him. What Pinchas didn't know is that he didn't need to wait, because Melech Alkum Imo, the infinitely strong king, meaning Hashem, was on Pinchas's side. So that's how this pasuk is that you tire out this horny male goat basically by letting it sleep this many, have intercourse that many times.
Oh, this is wild. I looked up the Rashi to that verse.
Yeah.
He says he doesn't know what the Zarzir is.
Okay, that makes a few of us. Now, there's I heard there's a Reb Sadia Gaon that says what I said before, that I think I heard it from Eben Ezra quotes this Reb Sadia Gaon that's referring to some kind of male goat that is maybe not castrated yet, so it's getting on, can't control it. The Matznita Tana, now in a Braita we learned Shishim that he slept with her 60 times, right? And it's going to be a little vulgar the next few lines, but that Zimri slept with Cosby 60 times that day. His testicles became like these mushy eggs kind of things because they were so depleted. She became like a row of a garden full of water where the water's overflowing because she was full of his semen. Amrev Kahana Umoshava Beit Sa'ah. Her moshav, which generally refers to where she sits, her anus was like a beit sa'ah, meaning it was very big. Tani Rav Yosef kevesh la'aman, her opening, which is her vagina, was like an amma, meaning it was disgusting. Amr Rav Sheshet, now says Rav Sheshet, lo Cosby shma, really, her name was not Cosby, el shvilanai bat sur shma. Her name was Shvilana Batzor. I don't know exactly where that name comes from, but she was called Namanik Shma Kazbi, because Kazbi comes from Kazav, right? From lying, basically. She Kazba Be'avia. She basically lied to her father. Her father told her to sleep only with the greatest, and she slept with this guy. Davar Achar Kazbi. The reason she's called Kazbi is Shamar Lavi. She said to her father, I want to go out there and seduce them. I want to be the agent of their Averot. Kosbi Amzeh. Kos means to kill. Through me, I want you to kill this nation. I and my friends will go out and seduce them. Behind the Amri Inchi, and this is what people say, Bein kani l'orbani, again, I don't know where this statement comes from, but they used to say this about a certain zona, that between the kani and the orbani, which means the reeds and the orbani are the willows, shvilnai mabai. What is shvilnai doing there? Meaning shvilnai is the prostitute. She's out there in the woods waiting for men to come to her. And bahadi kilpi dekani, and among the kilpi of the kilpi are the peels, the klipot, the remnants of the kani of the reeds. Shvilnai mabai, what is Shvilnai doing? Gafta li'ima, she's prostituted her mother, meaning she sent out her mother, her name, ima here means like the name of her family, is sent out for badness. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Chamisha Shemot yesh l'shpek, she had 5 names, this woman, Zimri, which is what the pasuk calls her, Ben Salu, sorry, he had, right? He had the man, the Zimri ben Salu, had 5 names. Zimri, which is his name, Ben Salu, his father's name, Shaul, we'll see why, he's called Shaul, Ben Aknanit, and Shlumiel ben Tsuri Shaddai. They were all the same people. Why is he called all these names? Zimri, al shenaseh kebeitzah muzeret. Like we said, he slept with her so many times as his testicles became like a beitzah that's muzar, that's wrinkled and old and shriveled. So that's Zimri. Ben Salu, al shehisli avonot shel mishpachto. He was hisli, which means he brought up, right, basically the families, the sins on his family. So he was maslil, like we say now, a maslul, like a road. Shaul, al sheishil atzmo l'dvar avera. He's called Shaul because he lent himself to doing avera. Ben Aknanit al shenaseh maseh Knan. He did something that is affiliated with Knan. Umashmo Shlumiel ben Tzuri Shaddai Shimon. That was in fact his name, and of course the Nasi of Shimon is not called Zimri; it's called Shlumiel ben Tzuri Shaddai, and that's what we're saying. It's the same person.
So this is not mentioned here, but in the next chapter, we're going to learn that, and Rashi quotes this, that this was all at the advice of Bilam.
Correct. That is what Rashi quotes, and we're going. That is the midrash that was. I mean, Bilam says at the end, he refers to it, but yeah, it doesn't say it directly. I think I have to stop here, unfortunately. I know we're not quite done, but I'm out of time. It was an unusual time today, so we're going to stop at these 2 dots. I hope tomorrow they can pick up from there and catch up and get back to our Mishnah. But this was, of course, a very long Agadata about Boel Aramit, Kanaim Pogimbo. We're going to get into a little bit more tomorrow. There will be more about this, but that is, this very enigmatic description of who's a Kanai, who decides they can be a Kanai, what do we do? But as we said, while the person's in the act, the Kanai is allowed to do it, not after the fact. It's not a punishment. It's not a court-appointed punishment. It's a reaction to watching it happen. And that is allowed.
Yasher Koach.
Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone. Get your rest. Take care.